Good afternoon, entities. This is Fred Campos. Happy December, happy New Year. I hope and pray that you guys had an amazing Christmas. I wanted to take a few minutes here at the end of the year. This is my 20th video, 20 episodes. I've come with you in my first year of office. Kind of a wrap-up video here to let you know how things ended up. Three things we're going to talk briefly about today, and I mean briefly. Number one, we're going to talk about the December 1st board meeting, which was a called meeting to deal specifically with the clerical error that I've told you about in previous ones. We'll talk about the results of the December 16th election, where Eric Crowell and Wendy Burgess were elected and reelected to the board. And number three, we'll talk about the called December 30th meeting, which is the nomination to replace Alan Blaylock. First and foremost, I just want to say how much I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys serve the cities and the school districts, and as one to another, I just want to say thank you very much for all that you do for the community. Thanks for stepping up and representing your school district or your city appropriately, or your county or college. Trust me, I understand. I actually spend more time here in 2025 doing my volunteer work than doing my actual job. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to serve you in this capacity. I'm completing my first year on the TAD board. Okay, so let's hit the rewind button real quick since it's been about a month since I talked with you. As you know and seen in previous videos, our chief appraiser got into some issues regarding a copy and paste issue. Our chairman called some special meetings. We've had lots of time. We did an investigation. After spending $35,000, they pretty much the conclusion was that no foul play was involved. Pretty much everything that our chief appraiser had been telling us was true, and hopefully we got to put that to bed. We spent a whopping 3 hours on December 1st, from 9 a.m. till noon, going over and looking at those details. We're moving on beyond that. Hopefully we can put that to bed. It has definitely rattled the staff in my conversations with them, but hopefully we can move forward in 2026. So number two, I want to say I'm very proud of you, entities. This election, since I've talked to you mid-November, has probably been the most organized, the most quiet, the most focused. I was looking at some numbers of conversations I had in the summer back in June and July, and some of these results were within 4 to 10 votes of exactly how I predicted to happen. Last minute voters like HEBISD, the votes didn't really matter. Pretty much the decision was made early on. You guys overwhelmingly came in and voted and added Eric Crowley, 721 votes, and reelected Wendy Burgess with 690 votes. The other two numbers, Mike Alfred got 481 and Saeed Sadat got 97. Which brings us to issue number three. You probably saw my last video. I did that little flashback of the future and actually was being a little tongue in cheek and funny as to what happened. People have asked me, how is it I know how these things turn out? I don't know. I'm just taking in consideration things that I suspect to happen. As suspected, there has been a called meeting on New Year's Eve, December 30th. Probably the most inconvenient time for the board. It's inconvenient for me as well, as many other members. But now that we are past the 16th, uh, despite our chairman wanting to do transparency, I think my feeling is, and this is purely speculation, he doesn't feel that he wants this vote to go into the proper place in January. So he's called a special meeting while he still has the votes to determine this appointment process. Uh, Many of you have written to me and called me and said that they think this is a gray area. It is a gray area according to Robert's Rule of Order, but it is not a gray area legally. He is allowed to do this. So there's been two issues that you guys have reported to me and sent me screenshots of ChatGPT and all sorts of things like that, and asking me specifically. I'm not an attorney, but we're going to address the two issues. The issue number one is, how is it that Alan Blaylock can still be participating uh, after his resignation? And this is a really interesting question. Some of you have sent me some screenshots of ChatGPT, which is not a legal thing, but it is something to kind of show you the Robert's Rule of Order. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk through each of those issues. So first issue we're going to talk about is, should Allen be allowed to vote regarding his replacement, and should he be allowed to even make quorum regarding his replacement? And the short answer is legally yes. Robert's Rule of Order, no. Does it show a bad light for him? Probably so. So let's look at that specifically, and then we'll address this question, because you guys have certainly been asking me this question over and over and over, and I'm pretty much telling you it's what's going to happen, and it's okay. And there's really nothing we can do about it. So let me share my screen, and let's look through some of these scenarios, and then we'll go into the second scenario, which deals with Alfred. So he sent us a resignation, and you saw in Chandler's video, we pulled it off the TAD board, and then he came back in and he showed up. And according to Robert's Rule of Order, can a board member who's resigned, can they continue to vote? Well, once the resignation is effective, they're no longer a member, which means no voting, no motions, no debates, no last favor before I go. But what about that loophole? Maybe it didn't get accepted. Now, I thought taking it off and receiving a letter was acceptance, but that is a gray area. So we have to take into consideration when the resignation is effective. Well, the board accepts the resignation is automated by a rule. But let's say, you know what, the exception, we'll make the exception all the way to the December the 31st. Let's assume that we haven't accepted it. It appeared we accepted, but let's pretend that they didn't. Well, then they technically can remain a voting member until it's accepted, but they absolutely should not vote on their own replacement, or because that's a direct conflict of interest. So, according to Robert's Rule of Order, a member shall abstain when they have direct personal interest and should not be shared by other members. Well, the issue that's going to come up on December 30th is not whether or not I imagine he would abstain. The conflict of interest is he still allowed to make quorum? Because this is a really, really interesting gray area. So let's ask this question. Can they still show up and make quorum? Well, the short answer, and this is a merciful clean, is no. Once a board member has resigned and the resignation is effective, they don't count towards quorum, and they cannot be used as a warm body to keep the meeting alive. However, we could argue that maybe even though he's resigned, it hasn't been accepted. But it basically says a resigned person is not a member, cannot be counted for quorum, it cannot be counted even if they sit quietly in the back. So okay, but I'm still going to say that this is maybe it's not effective yet. But according to the rules, they can really only attend as a spectator. They cannot be counted as quorum. They cannot vote or speak or be counted for anything procedural. But if they argue that it hasn't been accepted, then they probably could be counted as quorum. They absolutely should abstain and recuse themselves. I personally don't think he should be in the room. I think this is very bad. And the bottom line is, once resignation is effective, the individual is no longer a member. They cannot be counted towards quorum regarding their physical presence. However, they don't need him for quorum. So let's say he sits it out, which is probably the best thing. It's probably my advice to Alan as he steered clear of the building on December 30th. Then the second question you guys asked me is what about Alfred? Alfred has now lost the entity election, but he still technically serves until December 31st. Well, he can count for quorum, but he cannot vote for himself, which is, I think, what they need to do is just make quorum, so it's fine. Because and I just want to clear this up because many of you have been asking me, he's still a board member, he can still count towards quorum, and he can attend, speak, and vote in general. The hard stop is he obviously cannot vote for himself under Robert's Rule of Order. A member may not vote on matters which they have direct personal interest in. He can't vote for himself. He should not participate in debating on the appointment. He should formally recuse himself for the agenda item. But again, folks, he can be there for quorum. Uh, the best thing is, and he's an attorney and he knows this, because Mr. Alford remains seated till December 31st, he can count towards quorum. However, under Robert's Rule of Order and conflict of interest principles, he may not vote on his own appointment and should recuse himself from the discussion. End of story. So the meeting that's going to take place on the 30th, although it is called, and yours truly won't be there, and maybe others won't, as long as Rick Barnes, Callie, Eric, and Matt and Michael show up, they have quorum. Mr. Michael can accuse himself, and these four people will determine and appoint the next person to replace Alan. Alan absolutely should stay clear of the building. They don't need him. He absolutely should not step toe anywhere near the December 30th. That's my advice to him. Now, that's according to the rules. How we play by the rules, well, that's a whole different story, which I won't get into, but that's how that should go. So then the final question you should ask is, who has been nominated? Well, the nominees are Syed Sadat was nominated by City of Arlington, City of Watauga, Eagle Mountain, South Lake ISD, and Burleson, City of Burleson. Mike Alford was nominated by North Richland Hills. George Dotson was nominated by Haltom City and Colleyville. Becky Renfro Borbola from Fort Worth, and Clayton Waters of Mansfield ISD, and Kaiza Farr of Keller, South Lake, Carroll, and Grapevine Colleyville ISD have all been nominated. So once again, this is a interesting time in TAD. It seems like everything related to TAD has some sort of interesting story about it. It's always going to be in the news. This ending meeting that's been called doesn't want to push to January because there'd be some change of the boards. So it looks like our chairman is specifically going to pick the nomination to replace Alan. Crazy, crazy, crazy as always. That's the news I have to report. I will tell you in January how all this washes out. I'll also give you an update on our January meeting. I am continuing to meet every Friday for about 90 minutes and monitor the camera conversion. I'm very excited about that. That's my number one focus here. I want to wish you guys a very happy new year, and let's see what happens in 2026. Take care.